Greetings, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I hope that you're blessed. I wanted to come on here today to make this video because it was something that was heavily pressed upon my heart, and it's something I've been thinking about sharing for a while, but today I really felt that by the prompting of God that it was time to come forward. So I hope that this is a blessing to you, and that if this encourages at least one person, then I believe it will have been worth it. So to give you a little insight into me, my name is Amelia Rose Morris, although I'm more commonly known as Rose or Rosemore. I was born in Toronto, Canada, and I moved to Montreal, Quebec when I was about 14 in 2005. So as you can tell, I've been in Quebec for about 20 years or so. Moving here was quite a life change. I always tell people that coming from Ontario to Quebec is at times, it can feel like you're like literally moving to a new country. Everything is just so different. I am a mom to 3 children. My oldest daughter, her name is Aria. My son's name is Elijah, and my youngest child's name is Chevanice. And so in 2020, I was basically 35 weeks pregnant with my youngest child, Chevanice. She wasn't born yet. I had my 2 oldest children with me, and due to circumstances, I was just in a very difficult relationship at the time. I had to come out, and so I sort of moved in with my mom, who just basically rallied around me as a support. I had no idea that I was about to go through one of the most difficult seasons of my life, a season that I am still kind of going through now. During that time, as I mentioned, I was pregnant with my youngest child. My son Elijah began to just demonstrate some behavioral difficulties. And so I was super concerned. I didn't know what to do. My family was kind of at their wits' end about how to handle him. And so I did what any parent would do. I kind of reached out for community resources by calling the public health clinic here in Montreal called the CLSC. I explained to the CLSC the circumstances of what I was passing through, and I just shared that I really didn't know how to help my son, and I wanted to know if they had any advice or counsel. The CLSC quickly gave me the number of an agency called Bashaw, which is the youth protection agency that serves the English community in Montreal. When I got the number of Bashaw, I had no idea who they were or what they were about, but this social worker told me that they could help me. And so I called. Till this day, as I look back on that, I regret making that phone call. There are sometimes we make decisions in life because we lack just wisdom or knowledge, and then we look back and we're like, if I had made a different decision, things could have gone differently. But I recognize now that regardless of choices that I made, that God's hand was still sovereign in all of it, and that though it wasn't His will for me to go through what I went through next, that the Lord was really going to take me through it. So I called Bashaw, and when I spoke with them, I got a social worker on the phone. This social worker sort of ran through preliminaries, and they dispatched a worker to my home. Her name was Jamie Farnsworth. Now, as a little background on youth protection, in Canada, we basically have these youth protection laws, which says that if you hear of any form of child abuse, you are obligated to basically report it by law, right? And it'll even say something like, to report is to protect. A lot of times when this call goes through, this is what we call a signalment. And so the signalment goes into the agency, and the agency will sort of look at the details. They may dispatch someone to investigate to see if this claim is substantiated. And if nothing comes of it, then the case is dropped and the file is closed. However, if a social worker is deployed and they have a sense that there's something wrong, then there could be more drastic consequences. The problem with the signalment is that a lot of time this is what we call anonymous reporting, and so that means you can be accused of child abuse or neglect or child endangerment, and one, they're not obligated to tell you who called, And number two, it can actually put a stigma on you and your family. And that is what I experienced. So I called the agency, and this apparently triggered off a stigma mod. Nobody called on me. Nobody called for me. I made the call myself, just honestly seeking help for my child. Didn't realize this was probably the worst possible thing I could have done. So as I mentioned, Jamie Farnsworth came to my home from Bastrop, and she came as what we call orientation. And so the orientation started with Jamie. And so Jamie Farnsworth came to my home. She was kind of young. I think she's probably about 25 or something like that. Just seemed like she was fairly new to the job. And so we sat down in the living room. She began to ask me questions that just sort of explained I was going through a hard time with my son, that I was pretty much a single parent at the time, and things were just challenging. And so Jamie offered something to me. She said, we have something we can do. We have a place where we can take your son, where he can stay temporarily, and then it would give you a chance to kind of, collect yourself, and in a few weeks we would be willing to bring him back. My biggest mistake in the beginning was not seeking legal counsel or finding a lawyer. That was a huge mistake. And so I always tell parents, anytime you have a youth protection delegate come to you with any type of paperwork, sign, make sure you get legal counsel. Don't sign anything until it's being looked at. But this is what happened. So I signed the agreement for temporary respite for my son. It was the following day that my son Elijah was taken into a group home for, a short determined amount of time. And I was under the impression that he would be coming back and that I would be able to still be around and support him, right? It was not an easy decision to make, but I made it, and I take ownership of that. During the next few weeks, as I was awaiting the birth of my daughter, I kind of settled into just the routine as best as I could. I was grieving a lot. I was missing my son. I was feeling sad and just trying to make the most of it. But it wasn't easy at all. So on March 6, 2020, my daughter Chevanice was born, and I brought her home, and for the first few weeks she was with me. And, with a newborn baby, I said, at least, God, you gave me this life that I can take care of. And that is when things changed. On May 14, 2020, Bashaw sent in another worker called Candace Kinnear, who came to my home. And this worker basically came in and started to make a lot of accusations against me and my family. They started accusing me of educational neglect. I found out later on that the word neglect is something that is literally thrown around at almost every family, because within the Youth Protection Act, in order for a family to, let's say, have parental rights taken, or for a child to be apprehended and placed into the foster care system, there are 6 sections that have to be met, and one of them is neglect. And so this is a very common accusation on almost every court document. And a lot of times the social workers will basically go out of their way to try to find it in order to justify it. So on May 14, 2020, I appeared at the Montreal Youth Court. I had a lawyer there at the time called Jean Hervé Thomas. Mr. Thomas was supposed to come in and help me with my case, but at the last minute, he basically bolted on me 5 minutes before the court case started, and I was left inside of the courtroom without a lawyer, without legal counsel, left to basically defend myself. And when this happened, things went very wrong. The judge basically ruled in favor of Basha, told them that they could come in and take my children. And so before I got home, the 2 social workers and the Montreal police intervened at my home, grabbed my 9-week-old breastfeeding baby, Chevanice, and my oldest daughter, Aria, and they removed them. And for a number of hours, I did not know where they were. I can remember the panic. I can remember the fear that I felt. I can remember feeling very alone. At one point, when I saw the Montreal police coming up to my door, I can remember that I was just like, I didn't even know how to respond. And so in a state of panic and chaos, I was just like overwhelmed and just wondering like, God, what do I do? It wasn't until, so for hours, I did not know where my kids were. Finally, I got the information from the social work that my children were put into a group home called Odyssey Group Home. And so on Friday night, on Saturday, May 15th, I called the group home and we spoke for a while. I got to see my children on video. This was very, very difficult. I look back at the pictures, I could see like the distress on my face. And just watching your little baby that you held night, the baby that you would hold so close, and only being able to watch them through a camera lens, like that is an unfathomable cruelty that no mother or father should ever have to go to. But this is what happened. So on the Monday, I finally went to my first supervised visit. This was at 191 Place Frontenac. It's closed now, but that was the address of the building I went to. I walked into the room, the waiting room, and I remember that they didn't even want my mother to come in the building. They just told her she had to wait outside, and it was just like very, very inhumane. When we finally got into the building, we were ushered into a room. Candace was there. The workers continued to follow me around the room. They continued to harass me. They continued to bully me. I was just like, what's going on here? Hours before I had free access to my children, and then all of a sudden they had basically gotten in the way. And so I felt just upset about the whole thing. Didn't understand why they were doing this. It was absolutely just a terrible, terrible experience. I wish I could say that things got better as the months went along, but it did not. It did not. I noticed some of the things that Basha was doing in my children's case, things that it would take way too long to go into detail now, and that I've been puzzling together. And so I started speaking up. I started basically telling them the things that I was seeing that were wrong. And the more that I would speak up, it's like they would come after me. They would try to gaslight me. They would try to silence me. They would try to, make it seem like I didn't know what I was talking about. Workers would constantly make comments about my mental health. And a lot of this is just done to try to discredit the victims. And so many parents are basically, after you've been so abused by a system, and you are just continuing to, and someone's always telling you or trying to discredit your voice, it takes a toll on you. And so after that, the next 4 years was just a lot of things that happened that I'll probably go into more detail in further videos. So the reason why I'm telling this story is because for the last 5 years, Basha has held my family and my children in captivity. My children were funneled into the foster care system. While being inside of these homes, they were abused mentally, physically, emotionally, in many different ways. And literally, Basha's main objective was to move me out of the way because then they could have complete and utter control. Though the courts would say this is for the best interest of the child, it was never about caring for children. This is about trying to basically take children for profit. And we have a system that just relies on as many children as can be removed, as the more money that the system can pump out, the more these agencies can continue. CPS is a global network all over the world in many countries such as America and Canada, down to the UK and Great Britain. And it's very powerful system of secrecy. The way the youth court operate or family court, it operates in a system of silence. And that silence is there so that only those who work within the system will hold all the cards. And when you speak to those that work in the system, some of them are still in this mindset that CPS is about protecting children. But it's not. I've seen some of the darkest things that have happened. I remember a few years ago when they brought out the movie, The Sound of Freedom, and how this outraged people and people were upset. And The Sound of Freedom, truth be told, I could not watch it. I watched the trailer, but I could not watch The Sound of Freedom, not because I didn't believe it, but because when I saw it, I was like, it was just too real to me, especially given my lived experiences. So over the years, Basha has often told me, you talk too much about the past, don't talk about this, but you know what? If I don't talk about this, who is going to do it? No one. And if I don't stand up and defend my children, who else will do it? Nobody. And so I just share all this to let you know that this is what I'm going through. This is my story. This is a little part of my testimony. In the weeks to come, I'm going to definitely share more. And this brings me to part of my mission, part of my mandate. This year I started a company called the Scribal Rose. And the Scribal Rose was basically started as a publishing platform that would help others share their testimonies and things that God had brought them through. Because I believe there is power in speaking up, and that God has really given us a mandate as children of God to really be a watchman on the wall. And when we see things that are wrong, to call it out for what it is. And so by empowering the voices of other people to write their stories, to share them, I feel like I'm basically making a difference in the world, one person at a time. And it's been phenomenal to hear some of the trials, but also the triumphs of what God has brought people through. And so I just share that to tell you that not only am I working to help publish these voices, but I am literally that voice as well, that I as well have a story. So within the next year, I've written a book. It's called A River Called Mother. A River Called Mother is my personal testimony of what my children have gone through. I actually call it a love letter to my children. It details so much of the struggle that I face with the court system as a self-represented litigant, what that's like to stand up before the judge, what it's like not to be able to find the right lawyer, what it was like to defend myself. And so I wrote A River Called Mother from that point. And my goal is to share it, not only to raise awareness of my story, but maybe to empower other families going through this, because the system absolutely needs to change. At the end of the day, the strength of a society is its family. And if we don't take care of our children, if we don't raise the alarms on these systemic abuses, then we become complicit, especially when we know things are going on and we stay silent. And that is something I will not do anymore. So my book is called A River Called Mother. Please keep checking this page. It's going to be out soon, within a few months, working on getting it edited. The second book is a book called Unprotected, which is a very detailed analysis of the entire legal framework of youth protection, changes that I think need to be made, and just trying to empower parents, grandparents, anyone with the family court system, just how they can protect themselves, what their rights are, how they can defend themselves, and just things that I've learned. It's also what I called a detailed expose on some of the manipulative tactics that CPS uses to basically try to blackmail the parents. And so I feel like this is a needed project. So I just brought all that forward just to tell you that this is not just my fight. We all have a role to play. And with God's help, we are going to make a huge difference. If you want to follow along my journey or support me in any way, please check out the Scribal Rose. I'll leave the link in the description. And if you are interested in hearing more about my fight with CPS Child Protective Services, more about my testimony and what God is doing through that, then please check out my Facebook group, Mothers for Justice. Again, you don't have to be a mother to come on, because you could be a father as well, or just anybody who has a care for children. But Mothers for Justice is my flagship group that I'm using to try to just bring awareness to what's going on. And so that's all I wanted to say. God bless you. Thank you for listening. And I pray this will just inspire you to go and tell your story as well. Bye for now.